Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Vishnu Vara Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Prajamine Nirvashesha Shunyavadi
Hare Krishna. So I hope all of you are feeling well, very well this evening. We hoped to contribute to the well-being of everyone by starting our program with this musical meditation, which is called kirtan in the Sanskrit language. Samkirtan. Samkirtan means all together. And kirtan means to glorify. So this is a very simple but very purifying and very joyful way of glorifying God by chanting His names. So we were chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and I'm going to explain more about that a little later. But right now I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Suhotra Swami, and I was invited here by Reverend Mr. Roel Bosch, who unfortunately I'm told cannot be here this evening because of an engagement, a funeral I believe, that happened suddenly. So he is in another town. So that's a loss. I would have enjoyed meeting him and talking with him. So here you are gathered. Some are students, I think, from the university here, and some are our friends of the Hare Krishna movement from here in Maastricht. And Reverend Mr. Bosch, he requested, Hare Krishna, please come in. He requested that I speak, among other things, but he was interested that I speak on the subject. Now this is a technical Sanskrit terminology which I will explain. Please don't be scared when I use words that you are not familiar with, because I try to explain everything. You see, I don't try to leave anyone in the dark, but what he wanted me to speak about is Tri-guna Prakriti, among other things. He was interested in that. So what is Tri-guna Prakriti? So I'm going to explain this, each word. First of all, Prakriti. Prakriti means nature, just as we know nature in the West. It means exactly the same thing. Actually, to get a little technical, kriti, just like we have the English word create. So they're actually related. Kriti means to create or produce. And in the Sanskrit language, when the prefix pra is put in front, prakriti, it means wonderful creation or wonderful production. So that is Mother Nature. And actually the same idea is there in India too. That nature, which we call material nature, this nature that we're able to perceive through our senses, is mother. From nature we have gotten these bodies. Nature, Prakriti, is the mother of all living beings, and therefore she is worshipped in India, Indian religion, which comes from the Vedas, the Vedic scriptures. She is worshipped in a personal form, addressed as Devi, the goddess, Ma, mother, and there are many other names, Durga. So the general term is Prakriti, nature. And then Tri-guna Prakriti. What does that mean? So tri, just like in Greek, means three. You see? Same. Greek and Sanskrit and Latin also, these languages are quite similar. Just like in Sanskrit, the word for God is Deva. In Greek, it's Theos. In Latin, it is Deus or Dea. So you see, there's a lot of similarities. So anyway, tri means three, and guna Now, this gets a little developed. I'm going to be speaking different ways to understand the word guna. But let's start with the way my spiritual master, he's depicted here, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So he came from India in 1965, first to the United States. He also came here to Holland a few years later, Amsterdam, many places he came, to establish this Society for Krishna Consciousness. And it's because of his grace, his divine grace, that Ayumi and Guru Padma Prabhu are here as devotees of Krishna. We are his disciples. And it is also by his grace that all of you are gathered here to hear his teachings through my mouth. So he has, I was talking about this word guna. So he has translated this word guna as mode of nature. Now, again, referring to Latin, you may have all heard, it's a rather well-known Latin phrase, modus operandi, mode of operation, the way something works. So this Triguna Prakriti means basically that material nature works in three ways. And this is, of course, very broad concepts. We can go into detail and we can find so many things happening in nature. But from broad perspective, pulling back and seeing the full cosmic picture, we see that everything that is going on in nature is occurring in time. Time, kala, and prakriti. They combine together. This is our philosophy. Time is an energy of God called kala, and prakriti is his material energy, and they combine. And what comes out of this combination? Another word you've probably heard, everyone by now, because Indian philosophy has become rather well known. So I think everyone's heard the term karma. So karma, a simple definition, the most simple, basic, raw definition of the word karma simply means activity. Now, you probably, if you've heard something a little more about this word karma, then you may have heard it in terms of things that we have done in previous lifetimes and they're manifesting now as a kind of fate or destiny. Yes, so that's a further understanding of the word karma. But basically it just means activity. And there's a law of science. For every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Very simple. Like this is an example I've been giving in these talks. Here we have a cup full of water. So this has some mass to it, a little weight, a little density. So if I want to push it, you see, with my finger, there's a little bit of resistance. This is an activity that I want to push it. But there's a reaction that is inseparable from this action. And that there's a little resistance. So I have to give a little more force to move this along. You see? So action and reaction, this is a law of nature too. I think Newton was the one, Sir Isaac Newton, who came up with this. For every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So this is also true about karma. So anyway, out of the combination of time and nature, we get karma, we get activity. And these activities, this karma, is seen in three phases, or three modes. And this is very simple to understand. Creation, maintenance, and destruction. Shrishti, Stiti, Pralaya. These are the Sanskrit words. So, just like in the Christian Bible, in the beginning there was creation. The first book of the Bible, the first 5 books are called the books of Moses, the Old Testament, and the very first one is Genesis. Genesis is a well-known word. It means the beginning point, the origin, creation, where everything starts. So this in Sanskrit is called Shrishti. So there's a creation. And then things exist. The universe exists for a while, for a good long while. In the Vedas, which are the Sanskrit scriptures of India, the time scale of the universe, time span of the universe is given in very exact terms. And we learn from the Vedas that the universe, universal manifestation, is about halfway through. So it's been around for some 150 trillion years, this universe, according to the Vedas. And so it has about another 150 trillion to go. And then there will be what is called Mahapralaya, the great destruction, which is the third phase of nature. But you see, as we can see with the passage of seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter, they're cyclical. So according to the Vedas, creation, maintenance, and destruction, it's not linear time, it's not straight line time, but it's circular time. So after Mahapralaya, there will be a period of rest, and then again there will be a new creation. And things will exist on a cosmic scale for a good long while, and then there'll be another destruction. And this goes on and on and on and on without end. Because this is one of God's leelas. Now the word leela means play. So we address God by the name Krishna. Krishna means the all-attractive personality. So God is all beautiful. He possesses all attractive personal features in absolute, unending, and ever-increasing fullness. And the Supreme Lord's, he has his own activity, which is called Leela. Again, play or pastime. Because he is the supreme enjoyer. So, Leela Purushottama, this is another way of addressing God, that he is the supreme enjoyer of unlimited leelas or sportive plays. And this creation, maintenance, destruction is one of them. Actually, it's a very marginal one. It's for him not all that important, which you may find interesting. Because in our Western religious experience, of course, the creation of the universe seems to be the most important thing that God did. But according to the Vedas, actually not. Because there are higher levels of God's play, purely spiritual levels. You see, this particular Leela, creation, maintenance, destruction, the passage of time, well, obviously it is associated with misery. Because we're in the middle of this as living beings. And you see, this creation, maintenance, and destruction, there are different levels of time, obviously. There's cosmic time, which I just explained, extends over literally trillions of years. But then there are lesser divisions of time, which finally come down to earthly time. And so within these different divisions of time, coming closer and closer to earth, these cycles of creation, maintenance, and destruction get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And finally you come here, and we in this body are also undergoing creation, maintenance, destruction. The body was created with conception and birth, and it has been existing. Everyone here, I'd say, is average age of maybe 25, 30 years old. So we've been existing that many years. And at some point in the future, as they say in America, only two things are sure in life: death and taxes. At some point, death will come. And, death is not... Birth is greeted often with great joy, celebration, when a child is born. And when we're young and strong, in the middle of our life, adults, then we may consider that a happy time. But as time goes on and we get older and more dilated by disease and finally death comes, that's considered an unhappy time of this present existence that we have. Therefore, the question of suffering and misery comes up. So then it might be asked, does God intend us to suffer? And the answer is no, not at all. But we have chosen this by identification. Now I'm coming back to the Triguna Prakriti. The way I describe this to you is just in terms of the background nature, the material nature, in broad strokes, what is happening. Things are created, they exist, and they're destroyed. Now we are different from that nature according to the Vedas. When I say we, I'm pointing here. I mean the soul. I mean the very seat of our consciousness, the very seat of our sense of I-ness, that I exist. That identity in its essence is eternal. Again, according to the Vedic scriptures. And eternal means not only no end, but also no beginning. We as spirit soul simply exist, just like God simply exists. Now for those who are, very much, their minds have been very much impressed by logic. So logic demands an explanation of origin. In Sanskrit, logic is sometimes called hetu, the word hetu. And hetu also means cause. So in the material world, as I said, everything in this world, this present existence, we can speak of, yes, the cause of creation, that there was a beginning. My body, there's a cause of creation. There's a cause of creation of everything we see in this room. You see, this television was manufactured by Philips here in the Netherlands. You can find the date of manufacture somewhere in the back, I suppose. So this is hetu, this is logic. So then people who are, whose minds are very much impressed with logic, and when we start to talk about God and the soul, they want to say, well, where did that start? What's the beginning of God? What's the beginning of the soul? Well, I'm here to explain something about transcendental logic. Transcendental logic accepts the fact of eternality as being the basis of everything. The simple fact that ultimate reality is not created. It simply is. And this may be a little hard, especially for Western people to understand, because I mentioned this linear time. This is a Western conception. The linear time, the beginning to end. This is, very much impressed scientific thinking, logical thinking. But the Vedas say, no, time is cyclical. So if time is cyclical, that means there must be a background. You see, like a wheel turning. The Indian flag, they have this tricolor, 3 colors. And then in the middle, in the white band in the middle, there's a wheel. This is called the wheel of Dharma. So this wheel also stands, it's a chakra, Dharma chakra. Chakra means wheel. And this also stands for the movement of time too, creation, maintenance, destruction. Now for a wheel to turn, it must revolve, it must rotate on a central hub. And this doesn't turn. Now here's some logic for you. This is logical, you see. The hub can't be changing. It can't be going through, it has to be constant. So this is the Vedic way of looking at our existence. That yes, this universe is cycling through its stages of creation, maintenance, and destruction, but it can only do this if there's an unmoving, unchanging center, basis. And that is called Brahman, for example. There are different words. Brahman is one. Brahman means the absolute truth. But ultimately for us, because we are Vaishnavas, we are worshippers of the personal God, Vishnu or Krishna, this absolute truth is the supreme person, the supreme spiritual person, who is constant, without beginning, without end. And you and I, as Krishna declares in Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, speaking of the soul, which is our essence, he says, Mama Aivangsa, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That the souls, the word Jiva means life force or soul. So, Mama Aivangsa means they are certainly part of me. They are certainly aspects of my own nature, which is transcendental. Therefore he concludes Sanatana, eternal. The soul is, just as I am eternal, so the soul is eternal. And there are nice examples given in the Vedas to illustrate the relationship between the soul and God. One example is the sparks coming out of a fire. So they have the same quality. Spark and fire have the same quality. But a spark is very small. And a spark can leave the fire. Some sparks stay and dance inside the fire, but others go out into the smoke. You see, and they gradually lose their brightness because they leave the fire. Another example is the sun rays and the sun. So modern science says the rays of the sun are composed of tiny particles, which are called photons. Now a photon is a very tiny thing, subatomic. And similarly the jiva, the soul, is called anu, which means very, very small. A very small part of God. But still photon, we say photoelectric, photosynthesis. This photo means light. So photon has the same quality as the sun, the quality of light. So we all have the same quality as God. Sat Chit Ananda, eternality, knowledge, and Ananda, Chit means knowledge, and Ananda means bliss. This is our essential nature. But there's a difference between us and God. And that is, again, that we are Anu, very small, and he is Vibhu, the greatest. So this smallness and greatness, it is there for relationship. That is God's intention. Not that things are this way so that God can be an authoritarian dictator. We're so small, we can't do anything, we're helpless. But actually, this is an arrangement of love. Just like father and son, mother and child. So this is actually, that relationship is supposed to be meant for an exchange of love. It may become other things, but it's supposed to be for love. So God is so kind, God is so merciful, that he wants our love, even though we're so small and insignificant. And he considers the love of his devotees to be more important than even himself. This is all revealed in the Vedic scriptures. So, but we, when I say we now, I'm talking about we, the souls in this material world, as I said, which is a kind of lesser or marginal lila of all the things that God is doing, which are unlimited things. There's this one thing over in one corner, the creation, maintenance, and destruction of this universe. Actually, the Vedas say there's not only this universe. There are many, many, many other universes. This is also interesting, beyond this one that we live in. So some modern physicists I've read, they also have speculated up the same idea. That the universes are like bubbles in a cauldron or something, a cooking pot, so many bubbles. One physicist in America named Guth, Professor Guth, he came up with this idea. So it's a pretty good idea from the Vedic point of view. The Vedas, as well as the scriptures of ancient Egypt also, describe the basis of this cosmic manifestation to be a great ocean, the ocean of causation. And there are bubbles that appear in this ocean, and each one of these bubbles is a universe. This is not an ocean of what we know to be water. This is an ocean of mystic potency, mystical powers. Anyway, I don't want to wander off into too many esoteric sidetracks. So we live in one universe, although we're spiritual, and we are surrounded by this matter. What's the difference between matter and spirit? Easy to understand. Matter is that which is changing, going through these cycles of time, and spirit is eternal. Spirit is ever existing. But we have, for a long, long time, not just for this life, but for many, many countless lives, we have been identifying with matter, not with spirit. We have been identifying with matter. And therefore we become affected by nature's modes. This creation, maintenance, and destruction. It affects, it influences, it colors human consciousness, our consciousness, which is, again, originally spiritual. But it gets colored by these modes of nature. Now I'm going to give you an example. A simple example which everyone can appreciate. As yesterday, the last 2 days, I don't know about here in Maastricht, but in Amsterdam, it was pretty good weather. The sun was out, sky was blue, and then today the clouds rolled in and became dark and rainy. All the way down here we were driving, it was pretty much gloomy. So we all know how this change of weather also affects our minds. You see, it seems to be pretty normal that when it's a bright, sunny day, when it's warm, people just feel more happy. They're just more. The mood is lighter. They just feel better. Go out in the sun. You don't have to bundle up coats and sweaters. You can just wear simple outdoor clothing. And everything's very bright. The whole world seems to glow. So on such a day, you look around, you see, people look happier. And then let the clouds roll in. Let it become drizzly, rainy, cold, wind blowing. Then our mood changes. And often we're not feeling so happy. We get a little depressed, a little grumpy. And when we go outside, we see other people also not looking so jolly. Now this is because we're identifying with the nature. That's all. That's all it is. We identify with our natural surroundings, and therefore we get affected. So these modes of nature, now this is a very simple example about weather, but these modes of nature go very, very deep into our psychology. It's not just our experience of the weather. That's one example, one small example, but actually the Vedas go very, very deep. It becomes a whole, actually, psychology. And so these modes of nature, like creation, and this is otherwise known as when it affects human consciousness, as rajoguna, which means the mode of passion. You see, when one is creative, when one wants to go out and do something, get things done, there's a mood, there's a psychology that goes with that. You see, you get all pepped up, and you're working very hard, and things in the way you push out of the way, and also it may mean that you deal with people, other people, sort of abruptly, because you've got something that you feel is very important that must be done, and time's wasting, and I don't have time to talk to you, so maybe tomorrow, and maybe this person really had something important to say, but because you've dealt with him in this passionate way, this person has become a little unhappy with you now. Passionate people, they're creative, they're also accumulative, they like possessions, they like wealth, they like the good things of life. They like also importance, to feel important. They like power. They like to wield power over others. And they like sense enjoyment. They like to enjoy themselves. Eat fine foods and all the fine things, pleasures of the senses. So all of these qualities that I've described, and I'm just giving you a very brief overview, they're all associated with this mode of creation. And you see, this is the outside nature, but it penetrates our consciousness and goes deep, 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 deep. And actually, it even forms a personality type, because there are people who prefer to be passionate. That's the way they like to be most of the time. And then the mode of maintenance, sthiti, staying power. This is called sattva guna, the mode of goodness. It means patience. It means also detachment. You see, staying power to remain steadfast and firm in one's position, and not be so disturbed by the changes of the world around. It means you have to be detached, you see. And this has to go with is usually associated with some more philosophical way of thinking, or more religious way of thinking. And it is also associated with persons who are very regulated in their habits, you see. So this is mode of goodness. And this is another personality type. And then finally there's pralaya, the mode of destruction. And this comes into human affairs as the tamoguna, the mode of ignorance. So in this mode, we are self-destructive. This can be seen in crazy behavior. People who just act totally whimsically without any, like they're not plugged into the world anymore. They're just acting in their own mad way. And other people think they're strange, It brings a lot of the wrong kind of attention on that person. And as a result of that, he gets this what's called low self-esteem. He doesn't feel good about himself either. So he becomes more and more depressed and morose and unhappy. He may take to drinking and to drugs, even to suicide, things like that. Or a person in the mode of ignorance is just uninterested in life altogether. Sleeps a lot, doesn't like to do anything, doesn't want to be involved in anything. Just wants out, more or less, out of life altogether. So this is another kind of personality type. Now, you have to understand, I'm explaining these things since we don't have all night, and I can't go into all kinds of detail. So these are very broad strokes I want everyone to appreciate. When I talk of 3 types of personality, you shouldn't conclude, oh, this is very limited. This is, what, you mean, in the Vedas they only talk about 3 kinds of people? No, of course not. Because there's all kinds of mixtures. You have to consider the modes like colors. And actually colors do represent the 3 modes. Like yellow represents the mode of goodness, red represents the mode of passion, and blue represents the mode of ignorance. Like people even say, I've got the blues today. You see, they feel down, depressed. So you start with these 3 what are called primary colors, and you combine them, and you get all kinds of colors, all kinds of mixtures. And actually the fact is every one of us, nobody is just in any one mode. We may prefer to be in one or other mode, or any combination, but we fluctuate, you see. Just like we have this term in the English language, binge. There are people who go on binges, they can be very respectable, responsible citizens for some good long period of time. But then they've got to get away from that. And they go on. Actually, nobody's here from Sweden, so I can say Swedes are famous for this. And if you go to Sweden, it's a very orderly society. It's very clean, orderly. The Swedish people are very polite. But if you go down to like Spain or Greece, and you talk to the local people about Swedes, because that's where they come on vacation, they'll go, wow, those are the craziest people in the world. They come down here, they just drink, they fall over the floor, they stumble around totally drunk, they don't know what they're doing, they have so many stories about drunken Swedes. That's when they leave Sweden and go somewhere else. So this is, in English we have this term binge, binge. Someone who goes on a binge, he's been, very well behaved for a long time, but now he's got to just go out and do something different for a couple weeks. So, everyone is like that to some degree or other, And so in this way, the Vedas say, by the combination of these modes of nature as they affect consciousness, we get so many different types of personality. But I've just been talking about human beings. But the Vedas go on to talk about all forms of life. They're all produced out of the combination of consciousness and these 3 modes. So you've got, like in South America, this famous tree creature, hairy tree creature called the sloth. In the English language, the word sloth, to be slothful, means to be very lazy. So this animal is known for that. It hangs upside down from a tree. And it can just hang there all day, just move a few inches and just eat a few leaves. And otherwise it just lays there and kind of sleeps. And they're famous for being very, very slow animals. So obviously the makeup of this creature, its psychological makeup, contains a very great degree of tamoguna, the mode of ignorance. And some other creatures are very active, jumping around, like little birds in the garden, jumping around, flitting up and flitting back down, this way, that way, all day. So you can see they have a lot of the quality of rajaguna, the mode of passion. Now we human beings are also generally considered to be rajasic creatures, passionate. But we're supposed to become sattvic. We're supposed to become good. Now this cultivation of goodness, this is by exercise of choice, exercise of free will. In the human form of life, now I have to talk about the difference between the human form and the other forms, animal forms, plant forms. all our soul, all our spirit, all are essentially the same. All are part of God. But, like every form of life has its own particular, special feature. Like you see, you could say if you've seen one cat, you've seen them all, as far as behavior is concerned. If you've seen one dog, you've seen them all. All dogs, when they're happy, their tails go like that, and they go like that. And they bury bones. They all have like a stereotyped activity, and that's how we know this is a dog. It may be, you got big dogs, you got little dogs, you got all kinds of different looking dogs, but basically they all have the same sort of personality pattern, if I can use that word in reference to a dog. All the same type of mental, behavioral pattern to them, and cats, etc., etc., etc. So they're more programmed by nature. Those souls in those positions do not have the independence that a human being can have if a human being really taps his potential. This is a special quality of the human being, is independence. Not complete, utter independence. Of course, we don't have that. It's not that I can, just do anything I want. That's obviously not true. But a human being can change his or her destiny. You see? Look at destiny, coming back to the word karma. So karma is like a momentum, like a stone rolling down a hill. So all of our deeds, whatever we've done in the past, even the Bible says, as you sow, means as the seeds that you throw on the ground, so you will reap. You will get the fruits. You will get the results of those seeds that you have spread on the ground. So as we have done in the past, so now here we are. You see, like my spiritual master, he would say, you can see your karma. Just look in the mirror. Your body is your karma from the past. The fact that you're born here in Holland, here in Maastricht, in a certain family, with certain opportunities, all these things, the fact that you're born perhaps with a very healthy constitution, or on the other side, an unhealthy constitution, prone to getting sick, the fact that you may need glasses or contact lenses or not need them, etc., etc. So all these little details, this is all the result of karma. This is all accumulated from the past, and it gets served up in this life. Here you are. This is the result of everything you've done in the past. So that's, we call that fate or destiny. Fate is fatalistic. This is actually coming from the ancient Greek idea, because they didn't know about karma. The ancient Greek philosophers, they had a lot of ideas that are in common with Vedic or Indian ideas, but one thing the Greeks didn't know about was karma. They have no equivalent concept to karma. So their view of the world was fatalistic, and that they also believed in higher, just like in the Vedas, higher powers are described. They're called devatas or demigods, controlling powers of nature, different powers of nature. Like everything is personal, like the sun, for example, we mentioned before, the sun. The sun is ultimately the energy of a person, named Surya in the Vedas, or Helios in the ancient Greek scriptures. Helios. The moon also, another, is ultimately the energy of a person. Everything in nature, the energy of persons, more powerful, superior. We were talking about human beings. Yes, there are so many creatures below human beings but that doesn't mean it stops with human beings. There are superhuman beings above the human race. And we are, and their energies are, you see, we're dealing with their energies, sunlight, moonlight. And ultimately these are just like in the Christian tradition, at least in times, well, it seems to be coming back, this doctrine of angels a lot. I noticed there's a lot of books now about angels, and this is so anyway, previously too, there was the idea that there's God and God has his angels. And the doctrine in medieval Christianity that the raindrops, for example, are the tears of angels. You see, they had such kind of very beautiful ideas. That everything happening in nature, there are angelic beings behind it. So the same is there in the Vedas. And in the ancient Greek scriptures, coming back to fatalism. But the Greeks, you see, they had this idea that the gods, these devatas, demigods we call them, because they're not supreme God, but they're very powerful. These gods are playing with human beings like chessmen on a chessboard. In fact, I remember when I was a boy, 9, 10 years old, I went to see a film, which was a movie of an ancient Greek myth. I think it was a film called Jason and the Argonauts, which is a Greek mythic story. So Jason went out to find the golden fleece in his ship called the Argos, and he had his crew of very powerful heroes, and they had so many adventures. So this was a movie about that story. And I remember how the movie began. You see up in at the top of Olympus, which is the Greek conception of heaven. So in Olympus, there was Big Daddy Zeus, the king of the gods, and his wife Hera, and they were playing a game, something like chess. And on the chessboard there was Jason, there was all these personalities, and they're just moving them around like this. And then the movie shifted, and you see what's happening on Earth, and all these things. And then sometimes it would shift back to heaven. And so they were playing a game, you see. Now this is fatalism.